Hello, I'm here today at Konstanz with an intercultural conference on leadership competences with Glen Burridge. Glen, who are you?
Well, I'm in what might be termed an intercultural enthusiast. I actually work in upstream oil and gas. I'm originally trained as a geologist, and I got very much into intercultural during my international life as a geologist. These days I work as a consultant in mainly dealing with technical problems, technical risk and performance in upstream oil and gas. And I bump into intercultural problems all the time, in fact. So I'm now trying to see if I can integrate all the wonderful goodies within the world of intercultural into my work.
So Glen, what is stopping it becoming universal and in the bloodstream?
Well, my presentation was full of questions, in fact, and hopefully it infers some answers. I think there's a question of scale. It's remarkable in that it's a subject which can operate from the person, individually, cross-culturally yourself, all the way out to, if you like, global problems, or global peace, if you like. So there's questions around the scale that operates, and then having, once you've hopefully defined your problem, which is the next step, is then the expertise you bring to bear. So do you have, if you like, wide and thin interculturalists who are providing generic expertise, or do you in fact need to have blended teams where you have people bringing an intercultural perspective on things with domain experts?
Understood. And also I get the feeling that, would you say people are leaping in too quickly with the answers and with solutions? The intercultural hammer looking for the problem, which is the intercultural nail. Do you have an opinion about how that could change, or what could be different?
Well, one thing that's very interesting, and in fact a parallel with those of us who work with the subsurface, is that it's quite an unstructured problem. Sometimes it's difficult to know what the problem is, and so what I do see is that there's a lot of solutions there hunting for a problem, and the question is, are the right solutions being applied to right problems, and could actually, to start with, and it's a question of scale again, could one of the greatest gifts be of intercultural be to actually draw the problem for the client? Because one of the major issues with this field is that people haven't heard of it, but they know that the issues exist, and they see it every day. We all see it in our personal lives, in our communities, and in our working lives. But people have difficulty in actually pinning down what it is and describing it. So it's sort of behoven on the cross-cultural, intercultural field to say, listen, this is our art, we can actually show this to you, draw it, and then we'll worry about the solutions afterwards.
I like that. So we've got a plentiful supply of symptoms. The cause is not obvious. So we're halfway between a doctor and an artist, an arts in German, and we're getting from symptom down to cause, but we are not rushing in too soon with this prescribed or biased solution.
Well, and there's the other major issue, it seems to me, that the field needs to confront, that it's always had a center of gravity around geographic culture, and around I suppose values that are attached to geography, so nationhood, to regional cultures, but which you have very little choice, most people don't. And that's the premise on which a lot of cross-cultural works. But in fact, it would appear to me, and certainly in my experience in working internationally and in a complex field, is that in any given situation there's a whole spectrum of cultures at play, and it's a continually dynamic, moving force field, if you like, and in any given moment maybe national is the strongest signal, but in fact it might be professional culture, it may be a network culture, an affiliation of some kind. When we're sketching out the nature of the problem as a cross-cultural field, perhaps we should be thinking as well, are we actually showing our own bias? Do we have our own limited frame of reference? And are we really looking at the full scene?
I love it. Yeah, so the history of this field has been very much flag-based, country-based, and that has expanded to the Asians, the Americas, the Europe. And we can do something more. So it sounds like you're seeing the problems for what they are on a daily basis, which is a huge advantage maybe for you as opposed to the drop-in and whiz-off daily trainer. So you're getting some perspectives there. So where does this field go from where it is now? What magic wand, what profundity would you add? If you were directing traffic, where would we be going?
Well, I'd say firstly to be considering the full cultural spectrum. I should just say as a little anecdote that certainly in my work I see cultural problems all the time, and most of the time the strongest signal is from professional culture. So for instance, geoscientists and engineers. So we really need to have cultural spectacles on which are able to view the full spectrum and be able to see the modulation in it as time goes by, so it needs to be dynamic. It strikes me that at the moment there's, don't want to get too mathematical, but there's a lot of concentration on what seems to be scalar parameters, such as values, which are very descriptive. But in fact, and I think perhaps cross-cultural can take a leaf out of economics book, a lot of the failures of economics in the 20th century were the fact that it was trying to be descriptive, and it was also trying to describe rational activities and premises, whereas in fact the realization has come that you need to actually look at the behavioral aspects. Think of free economics. Then this allows economics to describe reality a lot better. So I think the thing which really comes across to me is that the field should not only be looking at the full spectrum, it should be dynamic, and it should be looking at the vector elements of it, so motivations. And that way we get a much more behavioural picture of what's going on in that whole cultural scene.
Wonderful. So it is a holistic, step-back exploration, intelligent questioning technique, which is going to give us a more complete solution. But it seems to be also what you're saying is we're not going to fall down the trap that we've all fallen down before, which has maybe damaged the brand of intercultural training and awareness.
Well, it's limiting itself, it seems to me, by looking, and there are situations clearly where the national dimension, the national signal, geographic signal is hugely important, and where the description of values is that's already a great step. There's obviously wonderful 60, 70 years of work in that respect. But for the ongoing health of cross-cultural, it seems to me that it's time to shake things up a bit and maybe move to a new way of looking at things. And it's going to be scary, and maybe the model is going to take a long time. I think also, and I come at this as a natural scientist, I think there's some wonderful connections to be made to dip into pure science and then come back again. Opportunities for modelling this, because these are complex systems with a great deal of uncertainty in them. This will take some quite thoughtful approaches, I think, which are not going to explain everything. By their very nature, they won't. But I think they will inform the debate somewhat, because what this field has is a wonderful, wonderful humanity about it. But it's actually describing a natural system, and so I think there's a really interesting cooperation there that's possible between natural sciences and what is a social science. There's also the problem, and you can hear it even in my discussion here, of what do we call the field? We each of these terms has a specific meaning, but we use interchangeably cross-cultural, intercultural, transcultural. This conference is talking about global leadership competence. That sounds very management science. So there's also a bit of an identity crisis, which is suggestive in a way of a possible juncture point in the field itself as to what is
Interesting. Strategic inflection point. What I'm getting from you, ironically, is there is a reconciliation of cultural differences, and that other cultural difference is almost as a scientific method. So the different disciplines can come together and give an amazing new perspective of this very complicated and hidden area.
Yeah, what I see at the moment, particularly with my scientist hat on, is I see a lot of deterministic, perhaps normative analysis going on. That's not spectral, and if you're dealing with something with this much uncertainty in it, I think you've really got to look. It's a stochastic system; it's not deterministic, and you know you can describe something, great, but that's good for that moment in time. And it's not necessarily predictive, and that will. There's a certain amount of predictiveness that seems possible, but if you really want to understand how predict how an organisation might work or might work better, you really got to look at what's actually happening. You got to look at behaviours. It seems to me.
Yeah. The measurable, the before, the after, to look at something tangible.
Yeah.
Glen Burridge, it's been an amazing journey. Do you want to end with a pith? My turn. Glen, it's been an amazing journey. Do you want to end with something pithy?
Right, I'll try and be pithy about this. My presentation was full of questions, and it leaves me with one big question, and that is, how does cross-cultural really get into the bloodstream of society, into individuals, into companies, into hopefully large organisations, because it's something which those of us who are lucky enough to be privy to its methods and its the understanding it gives you, it makes the world a lot better. It helps you understand all interactions we have, because all interactions between people are cross-cultural, and I really do ask myself how the field manages to get into the bloodstream of society, because it really deserves to.